The world's largest island, Greenland. Metamorphosis of Greenland ice sheet has scientists terrified. The ice covering Greenland is becoming denser, with frozen slabs expanding in the area.
2 miles beneath Greenland's ice, something impossible is being revealed. A canyon longer than the Grand Canyon. Sharks older than empires. Seeds buried since prehistory. As the ice retreats, Greenland isn't just melting. It's uncovering systems scientists never expected to reactivate. And for the first time, scientists are admitting they don't know what comes next. 15. Greenland. Greenland is a place like no other, sitting right between the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans. To truly understand how extreme this land is, you first have to grasp its sheer scale. Greenland's vastness surpasses even the tripled size of Texas. Most of it sits above the Arctic Circle. In the summer, the sun never sets, yet it stays chilly. In the winter, the sun disappears below the horizon for months, and it becomes so cold that your breath could practically freeze mid-air. About 80% of this massive land is buried under a giant shield of ice. This is the second largest ice sheet on Earth.
This is the second largest ice sheet on Earth.
Beyond the ice is a tundra, a flat land with strong winds and no trees. Even here, the ground itself is frozen solid, a layer called permafrost. The coastline is incredibly long and rocky. If stretched out into a single string, it would almost wrap around the entire center of the Earth. Despite the brutal cold, life finds a way. Musk oxen, reindeer, and Arctic foxes roam the edges of the ice. In the freezing waters, you'll find walruses and whales, while polar bears hunt along the coast. 45% of the entire island is part of the world's largest national park, a place so remote that only a few scientists and hunters ever go there. Greenland is a place of extremes. The north holds the oldest, thickest ice, while the south actually sees some green in the summer. It is a land with a rich history and more frozen water than you can possibly think of. But this frozen giant is changing in ways that worry experts. And the concern isn't just about what's happening on the island itself, but about where all that ice ultimately goes once it begins to move. All that ice isn't staying in one place. Trillions of tons of fresh water are pouring into the ocean, raising concerns about disrupting the hidden system that keeps Earth's weather stable. Scientists warn that if the current trend continues, key ocean currents could weaken, triggering a great salt reset, where circulation no longer works as it has for thousands of years. 14. The pressure bomb. In 1995, something happened in northeast Greenland that had never been seen before. On a massive piece of ice called the 79 North Glacier, a giant lake of melted water suddenly appeared. Before the mid-1990s, it was too cold for these lakes to form here. But as the air warmed up, the ice began to melt into a deep blue pool. This lake isn't just sitting there, it's acting like a giant hydraulic drill. Since it formed, the lake has suddenly broken through its ice barrier and drained into the ocean 7 different times. 4 of those times happened just in the last 5 years. When the lake drains, millions of tons of fresh water force through the ice in just a few hours. These drainage events are tearing apart the glacier, a giant block of ice that moves very slowly, cracking and weakening it from the inside. Since 2019, scientists have found strange triangular cracks on the surface. These cracks turn into huge vertical pipes called moulins.
A moulin is a hole in the ice
That can be dozens of meters wide. But the real terror is what happens underneath. These pipes carry the meltwater all the way down to the bottom of the glacier. The water can't get out once it gets to the bottom. The water gets stuck between the ice and the frozen ground below, creating a pressurized blister of water that can even lift the glacier slightly off the ground. This water that is trapped acts like grease, letting the ice above it move more quickly toward the sea. It's even more shocking that these cracks don't just disappear. They stay open for years, letting meltwater drain away like a permanent drain. Scientists are having to rethink how glaciers work because of this kind of long-lasting damage. For centuries, glaciers were thought to change only over thousands of years. Now, massive and permanent shifts are unfolding in a matter of days. Scientists are racing to learn whether the 79 North Glacier can recover, or if the Great Salt Reset has already begun. But the 79 North Glacier isn't just breaking apart because of the water. Deep inside these new cracks and floating on the surface of these melting lakes, scientists have stumbled upon something even more bizarre. This threat doesn't wait for the ice to lift. It is actively consuming the ice from within. As the built-up water pressure inside the glacier is released, it also releases an ancient, microscopic world. Scientists are only beginning to understand the giant viruses of the North. 13. The giant viruses of the North. Every spring, the Arctic wakes up, polar bears leave their lairs, and birds return from the south. But deep on the Greenland ice sheet, a much smaller and stranger world is also coming back to life. As the sun hits the ice, tiny plants called algae begin to grow.
But microscopic algae have bloomed on the ice sheet for at least a century.
They cover the white snow in massive patches of dark purple and black. This process is a huge problem. While white ice reflects sunlight like a mirror, dark ice absorbs it. This dark ice makes the glaciers melt much faster, which speeds up global warming for everyone. However, scientists have found something dangerous hidden in the ice: giant viruses. Viruses are typically much smaller than bacteria, roughly 1,000 times smaller. But these giant viruses are monsters. They grow to 2.5 micrometers, making them bigger than most bacteria. Giant viruses were found in ice, which was surprising since they were previously found in soil and the ocean. New research suggests they may actually play an important role. According to researcher Laura Perini, these enormous organisms could be the Arctic's heroes. They seem to feed on the snow algae by infecting them. If these viruses act as a natural control team, they could control the dark algae blooms and keep the ice white. If these viruses really are helping control algae, they may be only the first sign of what melting ice is beginning to release. The melting snow is uncovering more ghosts from the past than just these viruses. As the ice disappears, it's revealing something even older: the DNA of a world that shouldn't exist in the Arctic. To understand why Greenland is changing so fast, the timeline must rewind 2 million years to a lost, green world. 12. The genetic time machine. Deep in the frozen ground of northern Greenland, in a place called the Köbenhavn Formation, scientists have just discovered a genetic miracle. They found tiny fragments of DNA hidden in clay and quartz that are 2 million years old. The reason they survived is simple but extraordinary. For 20,000 years, layers of sediment built up and were eventually frozen solid. Because humans never disturbed this frozen sediment, the DNA stayed safe. A team of 40 researchers spent years trying to unlock these secrets. They had to figure out how to peel the DNA away from the tiny grains of sand without destroying it. When they finally read the DNA, a hidden world appeared. Today, the Köbenhavn region in northern Greenland is a freezing polar desert. But 2 million years ago, it was a green forest full of trees.
2 million years ago, northern Greenland looked nothing like it does today.
The DNA revealed birch and poplar trees, reindeer, hares, and lemmings. But the biggest shock was the mastodon, an ancient, elephant-like animal. Scientists believed mastodons only lived in the forests of North and Central America. Their presence this far north shows that these giant, elephant-like animals traveled thousands of miles across a much warmer world. How did they survive there? The DNA shows these animals lived in an ecosystem unlike anything on Earth today. If a mastodon could find enough food to survive in northern Greenland, the entire Arctic was once a warm, thriving garden. That discovery is not just about the past, it may help shape the future. Scientists like Professor Kurt Kjær believe we can study the survival clues hidden in this ancient DNA to help modern plants survive global warming. and genetic engineering could help some species avoid extinction. But while this ancient world shows us how life can survive, it also shows us how much the planet can change. These ancient forests only existed because the ice was gone. This incident brings us back to the most terrifying question of all. Is the current melting of Greenland pushing us toward a disaster we can't stop? 11. The exploding ice. For a long time, experts thought that water in Greenland could only go down. They thought that meltwater on the surface basically flowed out to the ocean through fractures. But in July 2025, a group of scientists unearthed something that changed everything. They found confirmation that water trapped under the ice can build up enough pressure to break the ice and raise it up. There are lakes deep under the ice that can hold a lot of pressure. People call these lakes subglacial lakes.
Where underneath layers of ice exists the bizarre world of subglacial lake.
One of these lakes, in a remote part of northern Greenland, suddenly burst open in the summer of 2014. Over the next 10 days, 90 million cubic meters of water rushed out. The force was so violent that it did the impossible. It pushed the water upward. In a place where the ice was once smooth and flat, a huge hole 85 meters deep suddenly appeared. Nearby, a giant field of ice was torn apart. The flood uprooted massive ice blocks and left them scattered across the surface. What is even more surprising is that the flooding happened in a spot where scientists thought the ice was frozen solid to the rock. As the world warms, trapped water pressure under the ice may happen more often, cracking glaciers from the inside and changing how scientists predict future sea levels. 10. The slippery slope. For decades, scientists believed that the massive Greenland ice sheet was firmly stuck to hard, ancient rock beneath it. This rock was supposed to act like a giant brake, using friction to hold the ice in place. But by using 373 seismic stations to listen to the ground, researchers uncovered a hidden reality. Much of Greenland's ice is resting on wet, slippery ground. Instead of solid rock, large areas of ice sit on a thick layer of soft sediment, about 650 feet of wet mud and loose gravel. While hard rock helps hold ice back, this wet ground can squish and shift, allowing glaciers to slide more easily toward the ocean. Scientists discovered these characteristics by studying how earthquake waves move through the ice and ground. They noticed a specific lag or delay in the timing of these waves right at the base of the ice. This revealed a low-velocity layer where waves slow down because the ground isn't solid rock, it's sloppy mud. When summer meltwater pours down through deep holes in the ice that act like giant drains called moulins, it raises the pressure at the bottom, making that mud even more slippery. They hoped the ice sheet might slow itself down over time, but this discovery was the opposite. As the Arctic warms and more water reaches the base, the ground will only get sloppier. 9. The secret under the snow. During the Cold War, the U.S. military had a wild idea: build a city under the ice. They built Camp Century in 1959.
The United States Army has established an unprecedented Camp Century.
It looked like a research base on the outside, but secret documents made public in 1996 showed that it was really Project Iceworm. The idea was to hide a huge network of nuclear missiles in the ice so they could survive a first strike. The camp was an impressive piece of engineering, consisting of 21 tunnels carved deep into the frozen ground. It even had its own nuclear reactor. However, by 1967, the military realized something terrifying. The ice sheet wasn't a solid, unmoving block. It was constantly shifting and crushing the tunnels. Assuming that endless snow would seal away the base and its waste, they pulled out the reactor and walked away. It didn't. Today, that abandoned base is a ticking time bomb. 200,000 liters of diesel fuel, 24 million liters of sewage, and hazardous nuclear waste are buried 36 meters down. As Greenland melts, scientists warn this toxic cocktail could be released into the ocean as early as the year 2090. Because of this growing risk, Scientists are now taking a closer look beneath the ice. NASA used advanced radar, known as UAVSAR, in April 2024 to see through the ice. The images were shocking. They revealed the old tunnel network of Camp Century in greater detail than ever before, with parallel tunnels still perfectly aligned with historic maps. 8. The edge of the abyss. High atop the Greenland ice sheet, the air is thin, and the silence is absolute. But beneath that quiet surface, an invisible countdown is ticking. Scientists have discovered that this massive ice block is halfway to a tipping point, and that the ice will continue to break apart. That tipping point is tied directly to how much carbon humans release into the air. So far, human activity has pumped about 500 gigatons of carbon into the atmosphere. If that number climbs to 1,000 gigatons, a trapdoor opens. At this threshold, the southern portion of the Greenland ice sheet enters a state of irreversible collapse. Even if every factory on Earth went silent and every car stopped running, the melting would continue on its own. This single shift would push global sea levels up by 1.8 meters, swamping coastal cities and turning dry land into ocean floor. The danger lies in the elevation feedback. Currently, the top of the ice sheet sits miles high in the freezing upper atmosphere.
He wanted those instruments beneath Thwaites, at the place where the glacier meets the land.
As the ice melts, the surface drops. For every meter the ice sinks, the air around it gets warmer. Eventually, the ice reaches a height where temperatures stay warm all year. When that happens, winter snow can no longer rebuild the ice, and the melting speeds up in a damaging cycle. If the carbon count reaches 2,500 gigatons, the second tipping point arrives. This triggers the total disappearance of the entire ice sheet, a move that raises the world's oceans by 7 meters. While the final meltdown takes centuries, the physics that lock this future in place are happening today. The gravity of a warming world is beginning to pull us forward. 7. The subglacial superhighway. Deep beneath a mile of solid ice, Greenland hides a secret that remained invisible for millions of years. Using ice-penetrating radar from NASA's Operation Icebridge, scientists discovered a massive, winding canyon running through the bedrock. It stretches for 460 miles, making it longer than the Grand Canyon, and it plunges 2,600 feet deep in several spots. At first, the radar showed what looked like a huge gap beneath the ice. But this isn't just a hole in the ground. It's an ancient river system that existed long before the ice sheet formed. Researchers found a path that ran from the center of Greenland to the northern coast by sending radio waves through the ice and measuring how long it took for them to bounce back. Greenland's huge canyon under the ice works like a drain. It takes melted water from the middle of the island directly to the ocean. Because the bottom of the canyon is below sea level, it creates a perfect superhighway for water to escape. However, the drainage is only part of the story. What truly matters is what this moving water does to the ice above it. This canyon doesn't just sit there, it controls how the ice moves and how quickly it melts. As surface temperatures rise, the ancient highway is getting busier, carrying more water to the sea and helping to reshape the future of the entire ice sheet. But a giant canyon isn't the only thing the ice is hiding. While this superhighway moves the water, the ground the ice actually sits on is far less stable than we once thought. 6. The underground stove. As the sun heats the surface of Greenland, something else is warming the ice from below. For years, scientists were puzzled by why parts of the ice sheet were melting far faster than expected, even in areas that should have stayed frozen. Now, researchers believe they've found the answer. Researchers used hundreds of thousands of computer simulations and satellite data to make the most detailed 3D models of the temperature deep below Greenland. What they found was surprising. The rock far below the ice is not evenly cold. Instead, some areas are much warmer than others, forming hidden underground hotspots. This uneven underground heat is a leftover mark from Greenland's ancient past. Millions of years ago, the tectonic plate carrying Greenland slowly moved over the Iceland hotspot, a powerful volcanic region deep within the Earth. As the land passed over it, the hotspot heated the rock below like a blowtorch, leaving behind a trail of warmer rock that still affects the ice today. That hidden heat acts like a heater beneath the ice. The rocks under the ice make the base of the ice sheet softer when they are warm. The extra heat makes the ice slide toward the ocean faster and changes how the ground moves. By mapping these hidden hotspots, scientists can finally see the full picture. Ice isn't disappearing only because the air is getting warmer. It's also being lost because the Earth itself is still radiating heat from a volcanic journey that happened long before humans ever walked the planet. Chimai, the rising giant. Greenland is a land under incredible pressure. The weight of ice, up to 3 kilometers thick, has crushed the Earth's crust for thousands of years. Isostatic depression pushes the crust deep into the soft, heated mantle underneath. It turns the island into a huge, empty bowl. But now that bowl is beginning to rise. As global warming melts the ice sheet faster, the immense weight is being lifted. This triggers post-glacial rebound, the slow rise of bedrock once the ice no longer holds it down. The process began after the last ice age, but today it is happening much faster. Between 2013 and 2023,
it was totally deformed from the pressure, and then it froze over again.
the ground in some parts of Greenland rose by 20 centimeters, an astonishing pace equal to 2 meters per century. GPS stations across the island show that the rise is not just a delayed response from the distant past. The land is rising faster right now because the ice is disappearing rapidly today. This creates a strange situation. While much of the world worries about rising sea levels, parts of Greenland's coastline are actually rising faster than the ocean itself. This doesn't mean Greenland is free from danger. It faces a different kind of chaos. New land is emerging from the sea, turning old maps into relics and forcing ports, harbors, and coastal buildings to adapt to a shoreline that grows taller every year. These practical disruptions are symptoms of something much bigger. 4. The shaking giants. A new class of seismic activity has been discovered beneath Greenland's ice: glacial earthquakes. These strong tremors are caused by glaciers breaking up and dying in a violent way, which is different from traditional earthquakes that happen when the ground moves deep underground. What happens next is sudden and powerful. When a big piece of ice breaks off a glacier, it doesn't just fall off quietly. When the iceberg hits the ocean, it makes a sudden push and release force that is so strong that it actually slams back against the glacier it just left. The crash pushes the whole glacier back and down for a few minutes before it bounces back. That huge movement sends seismic waves that last a long time all over the world. Because these vibrations last longer and behave differently than normal earthquakes,
therefore, when scientists look at the ice cores, they are not only exploring the past.
Scientists didn't recognize them right away. Only in 2003 did scientists discover these unusual, long-lasting vibrations due to their significant differences from traditional quakes. Since their discovery, the data has revealed a concerning trend. The number of glacial earthquakes in Greenland has increased 7-fold over the past 2 decades. In 2005, scientists detected twice as many glacial earthquakes as they had ever recorded before. Even worse, these quakes are migrating farther north into the coldest regions of Greenland. 3. The living dark. High above the Arctic Circle, Greenland is losing its shine. For thousands of years, the island acted like a giant mirror, reflecting 90% of the sun's heat back into space. But today, that mirror is tarnished. Large swaths of the ice are turning a haunting brownish gray. This transformation is more than just a change in color. It is a change in the way the planet breathes. To understand why this white desert is turning gray, one must look closer than the human eye can see. Scientists have recently recognized the Greenland ice sheet as a massive frozen biome. There, scientists find glacier ice algae, the closest living relatives of land plants. To survive the intense summer sun, these tiny organisms produce a dark pigment called glacier brown protector. As they bloom by the billions, they dye the ice a dark, dirty tint. The change in color causes a dangerous drop in albedo, the amount of light that the surface reflects. While fresh white snow reflects heat, this dark ice absorbs it. This process creates a lethal positive feedback loop. Rising temperatures melt the snow, exposing bare ice. The algae thrive in this wet environment and darken the surface. The dark surface absorbs more sunlight, which causes even more melting. Beyond algae, other materials like dust, black carbon, and cryoconite, mixtures of minerals and microbes, are also stripping the ice of its brightness. Because climate change is causing snow to melt earlier each year, the algae have a longer growing season to spread their dark blanket. The darker the ice becomes, the faster it melts. This biological meltdown is sending a massive pulse of fresh water off the land and into the salty North Atlantic that threatens to disrupt the ocean's long-standing circulation patterns. Yet, while the surface darkens and the seas change, far below in the freezing, pitch-black depths, one silent witness has watched Greenland's story unfold for centuries: the Greenland shark. 2. The 400-year-old witness. Hidden in the pitch-black, icy cold waters deep under the Greenland ice sheet is a living fossil, the Greenland shark. These huge hunters can stretch over 6 meters long and weigh a ton or more, but their most incredible feature is their age.
Their approximate age can be determined using radiocarbon dating of the shark's eye lens.
By using radiocarbon dating on proteins trapped in their eye lenses, proteins formed before birth that never degrade, scientists discovered that these sharks can live for nearly 400 years. This makes the Greenland shark the longest-lived vertebrate on Earth. Because they inhabit such cold, deep waters, they have an incredibly slow metabolism and grow only about 1 centimeter per year. For a long time, biologists believed these sharks were blind due to parasites that attach to their eyes. However, new research shows they can actually see quite well in dim light, maintaining their vision even into extreme old age. By mapping the Greenland shark's genome, researchers found the secret to this long life. Special gene variations that protect against cancer, reduce inflammation, and aggressively repair damaged DNA. Yet these same ancient survivors are incredibly vulnerable. This vulnerability stems from the fact that it takes them over a century to reproduce. Because they take over a century to reproduce, losing just a few sharks to accidental fishing nets can damage the population for decades. They carry the genetic secrets to longevity, surviving in a world of ice that is now changing faster than they can adapt. And that very same rapid warming is not only threatening these deep-sea giants, but it is also melting away the ice sheet itself, revealing a Greenland that looks nothing like the frozen world we know today. One small, forgotten sample has just rewritten everything we thought we knew. 1. The secret tundra. The story of Greenland is getting greener and much scarier. For decades, scientists believed the center of the island was an indestructible fortress of ice.
The scientists test the core samples for volcanic debris such as bismuth and salt
that had stayed frozen for millions of years. But a tiny glass jar filled with 3 inches of sediment, essentially dirt and forgotten in a Colorado storage facility for 30 years, has just shattered that myth. The sediment was taken from the very bottom of the GISP-2 ice core, a 3,053-meter-long cylinder of ice that was drilled through the Greenland ice sheet at its summit location in 1993 and reached 2 miles of solid ice at the exact center of Greenland. If the center of Greenland melted before, the entire ice sheet is far more fragile than anyone realized. This isn't just ancient history. It is a warning. If the frozen giant turned green in the past, without human help, The heat we are adding to the atmosphere today could be pushing it toward a total collapse much faster than predicted. The poppy seed serves as a small reminder that Greenland possesses a green memory, a memory that is rapidly transforming into our future reality. When researchers finally put this sediment under a microscope, they didn't just find rocks and gravel. They found a window into a lost world. Hidden in the silt were willow wood, spike moss spores, the compound eye of an insect, and a single pristine Arctic poppy seed. Poppies and insects cannot survive beneath 2 miles of ice. They require soil, sunlight, and a stable environment. The presence of these remains indicates that conditions at the center of Greenland were once very different from today. During a warm period within the last million years, the region appears to have supported a tundra-like landscape, possibly with short, stunted trees, at a time when global temperatures were lower than they are now. Which discovery shocked you the most? Was it the shark that lived through the Industrial Revolution, or the fact that poppies once grew at the North Pole? Drop your answers in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to click on the next video on your screen, like this video, and subscribe to our channel for more updates.